So we are here to continue a very interesting discussion that was initiated by the previous panel, which also touched on what we are supposed to focus on, which is advertising. Advertising is, I would say, one of the hottest topics in the industry at the moment, and very rightly so. I come from a country, which is Italy, that started a very severe crackdown on gambling advertising in 2018 by implementing a blanket advertising ban, and which is still in place. And that has had an impact not just on the gaming industry, but also on the collateral industries, the sports industry and the media industry. Because, of course, as soon as these restrictions were in place in July 2018, effective the following season, so the decree goes back to July 2018, but its full strength started producing effects the following season, 1 year later. No more money, no more gaming money was made available to the football clubs. And that was one of the reasons why eventually we saw what we saw, with clubs resorting to some kind of initiatives like the one that you may have heard earlier this year, trying to launch a Super League, which is clearly something that was spurred by the lack of funds to continue doing what they have been doing up until then. So, long story short, Italy started this process, but the regulatory trend is quite clear all across Europe. After Italy, we heard about Spain. I would have loved to ask my good friend and colleague Santiago, what is the source of that data that he was quoting regarding the actual impact of problem gambling on consumers, because in Italy there is no official data about it. They all speak about problem gambling. They all talk about all this harm that is caused to the consumers. But the truth is that there is no official, independent, unquestionable data that supports this. So it's basically a political issue more than anything else. Some guys decided that this would be, a manifesto for them to say we are the ones who save the consumers from this big issue, which is gambling and gambling addiction. And so they did. And not coincidentally, both Italy and Spain are currently ruled by very populist parties. So, turning now to my very distinguished panel, which I will quickly introduce. I've got Susan Breen from Mishcon, Reya, London, Jason Chess from Wiggin, London, and then Luis de Carvalho, who is not from the private practice, but he is counsel to a marketing agency in Portugal. So he will add some fresh content to our discussion. I will start from Susan, and I would ask Susan to, since our colleagues from the previous panel stole some of our content, I would like to ask you to continue that discussion and tell me what's your take from the previous panel, and what is, in your view, the situation, particularly in the UK at the moment when it comes to gambling advertising?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Quirino. I wanted to pick up on a couple of themes from the last panel, because they're very much at the heart of what we're talking about today on our panel around regulation and will it kill the affiliate industry. In the UK, and I think Jason's probably going to say a few words about this later, but there's no legislative framework for licensing of affiliates. So the buck stops with the operator. That's not to say that affiliates aren't bound by the same advertising codes and the advertising standards Authority has said recently that they've reinforced with affiliates that they need to be transparent and they need to make sure that they abide by those codes. But whether affiliates should be regulated is one very hot topic among the affiliate industry. The second issue I think that they are grappling with, as are the operators, is how do they navigate through a really complicated, dynamic set of advertising regulations, particularly in the UK. There's been some new regulations and guidance out in November, and it is trying to find a balance between being able to do what affiliate needs to do, which is marketing, campaigning, driving traffic, understanding the dynamic of the customer, and staying on the right side of the law. Two pincer movements, I think, that are looming if you look at the issue with third-party cookies, transparency of affiliate marketing. Where do they get the information that they need to understand to run successful campaigns, and at the same time staying on the right side of GDPR and the right side of the operator's guidelines? So there are huge tensions right across pure regulatory issues, never mind the operational issues around AI, ad tech, and all of the things that the ASA is saying, use more of this to make sure your dynamic ads are served to the right people, away from minors, away from vulnerables, and get your act together in terms of advertising campaigns.
Interesting. Thank you, Susan. Jason, can you put everything in context in terms of, you heard about what's happening on the other side of the channel. And we know that the UK has always had quite a relaxed approach to these matters. Anyone who watches an EPL game on TV will appreciate that there still is lots of gaming and gambling advertising on the jerseys of footballers. For how long still can we expect or hope that this will be the case in the UK? And is this something that is bound to change going forward? Or?
Well, at the moment, there's quite a lot of pressure on that because there are public consultations in train in England, and the problem that the government have got is that the government want to give some sort of concession, or they want to be seen to be tough on gambling because that's the way that the atmosphere has changed. But the problem, Quirino, the problem is that there's no real statistical evidence to link harmful gambling and problem gambling with advertising. There have been lots of surveys, lots of investigations, and people have tried very, very hard to incriminate or to link pathological problem gambling with advertising, and there's no statistical link. And so the government has a problem. It'll have to make a political move, but there's very, very little evidence for it, and it risks being unreasonable. And the interesting point to me about the regulation of advertising is not the last panel, but the panel before on outsourcing, because in a way advertising is regulated. It is licensed in a way because the operator is made vicariously liable under the terms of its license for the behavior of its affiliates. So the affiliates don't have a license, but the operator is going to be held accountable. And the Dutch have taken that up as well, Quirino, because if you're applying for these new Dutch licenses, you have to put in a big, big outsourcing policy. And the outsourcing policy for the Dutch regulator goes even further than the British in terms of imposing your license responsibilities on your business partners. And so the Dutch and the British are obviously saying, well, it's a lot easier to make the operators vicariously liable, effectively license it or regulate it that way, than to start offering licenses for millions of people who aren't really gambling operators, who are just advertisers.
I would have said exactly the same thing as Jason, and I actually agree with you. But I think the issue from an affiliate perspective is they think it will give them more credibility, more trust in the market. There are already a raft of regulations that they have to abide by. And to be honest, I don't think the Gambling Commission actually want to regulate the broader advertising marketing industry. They're quite happy having one person in their line of fire. But the affiliates themselves think that that would be a good thing to do. I mean, the States is a good example of seeing the larger affiliates happy to accept the strictures of regulation on top of advertising. I don't think it's going to happen in the UK anytime soon, unless there's huge pressure on the Gambling Commission, but they are already grappling with a raft of very strict, detailed advertising regulations. It's just that, like the operators, there are a few left-of-field players, and they cause problems.
At this point, I think, Luis, it's the perfect stage for you to weigh in and give us the affiliates' view on what you have been hearing so far.
Okay, so first of all, good afternoon to everyone. About the first part, the regulation of the affiliates themselves regarding all the cookies and etc., I think it's actually something that can save the affiliate industry in terms of answering the question, because actually I think we must be regulated in that side. It will only help to make our business even more transparent than it already is, and it's something that we at Clever Advertising have been working hard in the last 2-3 years to become compliant, to be aligned with the TCF 2.0, with everything with EAB, etc. It's something that we look forward to keep improving, and we think it's good for the industry. On the other side, the regulation on advertising, as it is said, as you mentioned, the one you have in Italy and in other countries, I don't see it as being something that will actually solve the problem of people who gamble too much or who have addiction. You have two good examples where advertising restriction didn't solve it. It's alcohol and tobacco. They were very questioned for a lot of time, and eventually you have data that shows that it didn't work. We have to work more on controlling people that have addictions. We have to make improvements in responsible gaming, everything like that. But I don't think it's a simple fact that I will not display a banner of an operator on a website that will prevent people from playing. And there is another issue. If you restrict advertising from licensed operators, you are opening the door for unlicensed operators to enter the market, because they will not care about the restrictions. They will still advertise, but they will gain space. And I don't think that unlicensed or illegal operators care that much about responsible gaming and about the players themselves. So I actually think it will be more of a problem than a solution for all the industry, but also for the affiliate industry.
Okay, at this point I would make a comment and also an observation, which again brings us back to the Italian scene. What's happening in Italy in the wake of a blanket advertising ban? Very simple. Someone else has come in, and that's the NFTs and the cryptocurrencies. And it's to me, it's telling how biased was the approach of our politicians when they set off about introducing the ban. Because if you think about it, cryptocurrencies is not regulated. Trading on the stock markets is regulated only in certain situations, but certainly trading on crypto currencies and other financial products is not regulated. And the damage that is done to the consumers is huge, because most of those guys who are led to believe that if you buy cryptocurrency, you will make very good and easy money, it's completely wrong. But what's happening? Look at the jerseys of the Serie A football clubs. I think no fewer than 4 Serie A clubs are currently sponsored by cryptocurrency.
And the league too. The league is sponsored by cryptocurrency exchange.
So, I mean, how can you possibly be so short-sighted, talking to the politicians again, not to see that this is not the way to deal with things?
But the regulators, the politicians, even the general public, they level criticism at the industry that we don't learn quickly enough, we don't coalesce and collaborate with each other. But the same claim could be leveled against the regulators. But why black out and leave a vacuum only for something else to come in its place that isn't even as well understood as traditional gambling advertising? And I think the UK has tried to do it in its November guidance. I mean, there's a footnote that it said it adds scope to the guidance in terms of tipsters. Oh, and by the way, don't forget that on top of operators and affiliates, tipsters, anybody who is in the business of involved in informing, educating about gambling will also come within the auspices of the ASA in the UK. But these are little drips and sound bites, but nobody's tackling it consistently and openly enough. So it's like a battle between regulators and the operators and the consumers.
And this begs the next question that I wanted to share with the whole panel, which is this. We spoke about the prospect of regulating affiliates and issuing licenses to affiliates. But what about also, I would say, as a sustainable alternative, introducing some serious codes of self-conduct, which should be implemented across the industries, which involving the media, the football leagues, the sports leagues, and the gaming industry, because that is also a major failure. I mean, when you see when you count up to 11 different gaming advertising during the course of the same live football game. That's what happened to me shortly before the marketing ban being introduced. Clearly, there is something wrong there, and the industries should, smell the coffee and take action, preemptive action.
Well, I think you put your finger on it there, Q, because really this isn't about regulation and it's not really about affiliates. The problem is the amount of gambling advertising that goes around football. That's the problem. It is the frequency of it and the sheer volume and weight of advertising and the fact that the betting companies will have their names on the football jerseys. That's the issue. The regulation is absolutely fine. The content regulation with the Advertising Standards Authority, it's fine. The licenses of the operators require that regulation to be imposed upon Lewis and the affiliates. That's fine. The main problems, with gambling advertising are not systemic. They're just sort of, the odd mistake. The real problem is the industry going to volunteer to give up or to sacrifice the connection with football, or do we have to wait for the politicians to impose bans upon us. I mean, that's, I think, the rumbling about the public consultation in England at the moment is that the government will stop football logos appearing on jerseys. Is the industry going to take preemptive steps to do that? Well, they can't, because as soon as one, let's say one blue chip company might do that, and then you'll have any number of other companies who will just take the opportunity, take the sponsorship. So I think we're going to have to wait and see what the government says. But the point, Quirino, the point is that people are upset with gambling advertising because they morally disapprove of gambling, and they don't like seeing advertising for something of which they morally disapprove. That's the attitude. The attitude is that the society still hasn't got straight in its head whether gambling is acceptable or not. That's the problem we've got, because there's no evidence, there's no data to link gambling advertising and harm. So what's the problem with it? The problem with it is that there are a load of people out there who simply don't approve of it anyway.
There's also another point I would like to add to the discussion, which is when you have certain countries where you have an operator that dominates the market, or at least that has the biggest share of the market, and then you suddenly see changing the regulation, which, for example, forbids affiliates of working on a determined way. What will happen is that it will actually destroy the market, because the operators that have dominant positions will stay dominant, and the small operators will fall down because they won't have a way of advertising and getting new consumers. A good example of that is Germany, with the new federal treaty that entered into force last year. Some good measures were taken. For example, the limits of deposits for individual players is something I can understand the reason why you do it. You are trying to control the way as people are playing, yes, but at the same time, they forbid that affiliates got paid on a revenue share model. They can only get paid on a CPA basis. What happens is that most of the deals that the affiliates have were made on rev share, and the operator or the main operators just got entitled to say, I'm sorry, I have to shut down the deal we have because we had a rev share deal. Now I can only work on CPA. And then what you see is maybe you can suggest them, why don't we work on a CPA basis? But what we have seen is most of them say, we have no interest on working on CPA basis. So this raises the question also, are regulations only coming out because governments and regulators are worried with the player protection, or also because of certain relationships that exist? It's something that I've been seeing the last few years in Europe. Let's see what the future takes.
Well, all very interesting remarks. We are nearing the end of our panel. I don't know if there are any questions from the floor. Even if there were, I would not see them because I have all these lights in front of me. But if there are no questions, as a final quick remark, I would ask each of you, what would you, if you could reach out to the regulators, what would you recommend in terms of quick relief for the industry or initiatives that could wisely and cleverly drive the industry going forward advertising-wise? Susan.
That's a toughie, because I'm not sure the regulators fully understand the relationship between operators and affiliates. I don't think they fully understand the technology that needs to be used. I think the latest monitoring and enforcement report says a couple of things from the ASA. Make sure you're serving your ads away from the vulnerable, the young. Use more data, use more tech. find better ways to do things without having any idea how that sits with evidence base, where the operator sits, what the relationship is, and they even acknowledge in their own report that they took such a small sample to come up with these conclusions that they could not be extrapolated to prove anything. So I think it's a very long process of dialogue and debate. It would be nice to see the affiliates, just coming to your point, work in close collaboration with the operators and finding a happy medium, trying to get a trust that will move right across the industry. There's too much hype. People are fed up with all the advertising. And then look at clever ways to use the technology to come up with more sophisticated campaigns. And that's just not shoving ads down everybody's throats every 5 minutes. I think that's where everybody has sort of shot an own goal.
Thank you, Susan. Jason, do you agree with that?
Well, I wouldn't do anything. I mean, I don't think the system's broken. I don't think there's a problem with the law or the regulation. It's a political issue. I mean, what we have to do is we have to explain to the politicians that there is no link between gambling advertising and persons who suffer harm. And if they're looking to protect the persons who suffer harm, then the answer to that, Susan just said, is the more intelligent use of the player data that the operators already possess. That's the key. So I don't think, I mean, I can't think of any legal or regulatory change I'd recommend.
And sorry, Jason's absolutely right. I think in the latest CEO's blog, it said we want a more constructive, collaborative approach with the industry, and that relies on more data. Well, data from whom? And the exercise of the grey cells, by whom? By the operators or by the regulators also?
Yeah, totally. I think regulators, the advice I can give from the affiliate active, it's invest on responsible gaming. Try to know how we can help people who actually need help instead of trying to shut legal operators and legal affiliates who are super compliant, work with them. And I think that we all together can make an effort to make the industry even better than it already is. And I agree, it's not broken yet. We have to work on it together with the regulators, so they want to, and find solutions to help people who need to be helped.
I think Quirino's trying to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You are a media guy, so I would, how about closing this panel with a slogan like, advertise responsibly?
I would say advertise cleverly.
Home run. Okay, thank you very much for being with us up until now. And we wish you a great conference, a great stay in Malta, and hopefully some more sun for the days to come.